Hello, nerds, dorks, and poors. I'm back. We're going to have a little discussion today about history and the lessons we learn, and something interesting that came into the shop. Join me as we talk about the Cuban Revolution. In 1959, Fidel Castro overthrows in January the Batista organization or organized government in Cuba.
Cuba sí! Castro no!
Though he didn't ascend to the position of president or even prime minister until later, Fidel has his eye on the total control and takeover of Cuba. As it started out as a benevolent thing, then very quickly soured into something that was more political and sinister.
Cuban dictator Fidel Castro claims he was finally convinced by a young boy's letter.
But in 1961, Eisenhower, then President Eisenhower, had plans on invading Cuba after the fact that Fidel, rising to power, then decided to sign a contract with the Soviet Union and buy crude oil from them and have it refined in Cuba at the U.S.-owned or Cuban-owned free or capitalist or free market oil companies. This was problematic, obviously, a conflict of interest as we were in the heat of the Cold War, and having our enemies send over crude oil to a nation that was only a few miles off the coast of Florida to have it refined and be used obviously had some implications as far as having control over your markets domestically or close by your country, having the problem of those relationships getting better, and as we see play out further down the line, actually a nuclear threat to our country as the Cuban Missile Crisis after this transpires.
Cuban.
Eisenhower, at the end of 1959, finds out that Fidel is taking over the oil refineries, that he's moving in relations with the Soviet Union. So he tags him as a communist, and Fidel then pledges his allegiance to the Communist Party shortly thereafter.
Dictator!
The works are in place now for Eisenhower to influence the CIA, to talk to the CIA, to move the CIA to try to ouster Fidel. And there were lots of different plans, assassination attempts, things that went awry. There's lots and lots of material out there that you can go and dive into. But the ultimate conclusion that Eisenhower came in with was that we needed to invade Cuba, the land proper.
Did you know that one time the CIA tried to kill Fidel Castro with poisonous aspirin?
Brigade 2506 was trained in guerrilla warfare. They were all Cuban nationals. They were trained on U.S. Guerrilla warfare tactics and on U.S. Weaponry, and then also U.S. flight control plans with B-29 bombers.
Fighters protect the bombers.
Had all these left over from World War II. They said, we've got all this equipment, we can use it all, we can make it untraceable to the U.S. government, we can train up these guys and invade. The presidential election happens. Both Nixon and Kennedy both took a platform that they were going to do something about Cuba because, again, this is the Cold War, and everybody's on high alert about the problem with the Soviet Union and the fact that they have nuclear weapons at this point, and that nuclear weapons are moving closer and closer to U.S. property and borders.
Castro's invading.
Kennedy wins the election against Nixon. Kennedy is then faced with the decision to keep on with Eisenhower's plans and to move forward with them, or to dump them all together. Well, political pressure, his own ideas came into play and said, no, we got to keep this moving forward. We got to get Fidel out of the prime minister's spot, or the president. I can't remember which one he was at that point, but I think he was a prime minister at that point. We need to remove him.
You had one job.
Just the one?
April 15th, they move forward with the plans to bomb the airfields in Cuba and end up destroying about 80% of the Cuban Air Force, which at that point was pretty formidable with US B-29s, and they had fighter planes, fighter jets. They had all the modern equipment. They were bringing in tons of modern equipment into the country via the Soviet Union and some other sympathizers to Fidel's cause. And they really did have a formidable force on the island proper. The 15th happens. They bomb all the airfields. The UN is called an emergency meeting. The delegate to the U.S. actually didn't know that any of those plans, and so he claimed innocence, even though it was a lie, that we were actually in charge of the whole operation. Kennedy on the 16th then decides to move the landing operation from Trinidad. He decides we're going to call an audible, move it up to the Bay of Pigs, which was one of Fidel's favorite vacationing spots. So I think there was kind of this, middle finger attitude that Kennedy, which I can appreciate, that Kennedy took to changing the landing location. But he was also concerned about the fact that a lot of spies had infiltrated the Brigade 2506, and they were sending information to the Cuban government and to the Soviet Union to be prepared for the incoming invasion. So that he calls an audible, sends it up to the Bay of Pigs. They launch their sea expedition with warships and landing craft, equipment, guns, ammo, food supply, lots of things ends up going to the bottom of the Bay of Pigs because it's not a nice place to land. There's lots of swamps. There's lots of riptide current and current changes right there at the Bay of Pigs. So they lose a bunch of equipment. The 1,500 guys land onto the beach and at first easily overrun the local military presence there, but are alerted because there's a nice big radio communications center right there, and so the Cuban National Guard is immediately alerted, and 26,000 people show up. Right, so we got 1,500 guys, not a lot of equipment, and they're not able to get tanks and all this other heavy duty equipment that they need onto the beachhead because of the weather. It's just a total kerfuffle.
Bay of Pigs ended badly.
After the 17th invasion, a couple days later, the remaining forces that are still alive and still fighting on the beach and holding their objectives are finally given air support. So then we have this giant problem of now all these captured refugees that were now responsible for their training. All fingers point to Kennedy. The total relations between Cuba and everything are destroyed, and we see the warming of the Soviet Union bringing Cuba under its wing. Gorbachev sends all of the nuclear weapons over to be a part of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Fidel is vindicated as a hero now from all of this, and he's seen as a hero because he stood up to the United States, even though this whole plan would have been much better if we just stuck to what Eisenhower had initially planned. It would have been a much better situation.
Fidel Castro was there to throw out the first pitch.
So a couple of days ago, I had a customer come in with this 1911. It had the plastic grips on it, and he decided that he would keep, when he bought this years and years ago, that he would keep the strange aluminum grips, or what he thought were aluminum grips, on the gun. So he brought this into me, and I noticed, and we'll get a close-up of this, about how much corrosion this thing has had over its lifetime. And there are big chunks and battle scars in it. There are, the bluing is gone. This thing is rough. I mean, it sounds like a rattle can when you shake it. Everything's loose in this. This thing has been whooped. So I started researching these grips a little bit more, and they are not aluminum. They are actually a bronze that's been nickel plated. And they have this little crest here, which I didn't know what it was. He said he thought it was a unit crest. We have since learned, and as you can surmise right now, that this is the crest of the Cuba. And based on the condition, and I cannot tell you for sure, this is total speculation, but based on the condition, this was in a really, really wet environment, and I'm drawing a lot of conclusions here, but I like to be fanciful sometimes. There's a lot of corrosion, there's a lot of wear, there's a lot of battle scars to this thing, and funny enough to have the Cuban crest on the hand grips of this gun, that this may have been used in some type of situation. I'm not saying the Bay of Pigs, but could we wonder just a little bit? So I thought we would discuss this today. We'll take it apart over at the bench, we'll shoot it, and then I'm gonna throw this up on Gunbroker for $1. So I want this to go on for $1. You guys bid it up, tell all your friends about it. I think it's a really cool piece of history, World War II history at least, but it could also have been Cuban history as well, very, very likely. This deserves to be in somebody's hands that can appreciate the history of this firearm. So if you'd join me over at the bench, we'll take this thing apart. So this is just like any standard 1911A1. This is World War II vintage, but these nickel-plated brass grips are just wild. They were probably stamped. This is attached by a nut, so this emblem, but just really crazy. Like, it was obviously, they were obviously a pair of military grips because there's nothing on the other side. A lot of the commercial, like civilian grips, you'd see things on both sides, but you know, obviously the wearer would have had this up against his body, and this would have been on the outside so that people could see. And you can find lots of pictures of the Cuban Guard after Castro with custom grips. They didn't all match, but a lot of these 1911s ended up in their hands. They really did like these. But man, look at all the pitting, and like this is like frag or something. That's like a dent. Dunk. A couple of dents in there. It's been in some wild moisture just underneath the trigger guard here. It's just absolutely really corroded. Somebody's obviously polished that out. It will come with this, when you win the auction, it will come with this extra barrel. This is the original barrel. This thing is rough, like just like the rest of the gun, but it will be included. And there's an original hammer. The original hammer is rough. Like, it's all just really pitted out. Like, all the controls are pitted. It's just a really cool looking gun. Take the whoops, totally neat. All of the pitting and slag, and somebody thought it was welded, but I just don't see any weld spots on it. It's just really, the pitting is just so wild. It looks like somebody cut and welded it. I mean, the frame rails look fine. There's definitely some pitting moisture here on the back end. It's all there. It's all together. It just lived in a really, really wet, crazy environment. So we'll put this back together and see how it shoots. So I'm going to shoot it at 25 yards, and then we're going to move up at 7 yards and then do a burn down. So you guys can see how this pistol shoots before you put in a bid for this dollar bid gun that we're going to put on Gunbroker. Well,
it was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
not great, but kind of what I expected. Not great. 25 yards. Well, let's just say it shoots, right? So like 2 here, 1 here, 2 here, 2 here. It is literally everywhere except for where I was pointing. So, yeah, I don't think you'd buy this to be a shooter. I guess you could put a bunch of nice parts into it and make it a shooter, but holy crap, that sucks. But we'll see. Maybe it was me. I kind of don't think so, but that's like minute of man, you know, hit a person at 25 yards. So I know the barrel's old in this and everything's old and it probably hasn't been shot in a while. I just wanted to shoot this at 25 yards again because that first time was like terrible and I don't know if that was me, like just morning jitters or something like that, but let's try it one more time. The trigger's terrible. It's just horrible. We're gonna take it on the trigger scale. We'll take a video of the trigger. So we're gonna take a trigger measurement of this gun. Let's see how many pounds the trigger pull is on it. It sucks. It's not good. Want you guys to 100%. Ooh, yeah. Oh, whole 9 pounds. Enter. Let's get an average for this. It's a mere 9 pounds. Yeah, it's just enter. And like, look, you can see how sloppy that is. So a nominal 8 pounds, 9 ounces, so about 9 pound trigger pull. So for all you people that don't understand out there, a good trigger pull is like 2.5. A market trigger pull for a commercial market's like 5. So we're like twice the weight of the trigger pull. So a little bit needs a little work. So 7 yards, slow fire. We'll see if we can do a little bit better than that last one. All right, here we go. All right, so much better at 7 yards. I think you'd be a little more happy with this. You got 4 here, 2 here, 1 flyer down there. These could be me. It could be the gun. It's way better than this situation going on. All right, 7 yard burn down. Let's go. Again, minute of man. So cool. Thanks for watching. Thanks for stopping by and go bid on this pistol. It's not accurate. It's super rattly and sloppy, but it's gonna look cool as heck in your collection. Thanks for watching.